Okay, well, I'd like to get started then. I'd like to welcome everybody for the next few hours to what we're calling the GLIMPRINT Kickoff meeting. And the theme really of this meeting is to try to understand where we came from, who we are, and where we're headed. And there are going to be multiple people involved in this, but Tom and I are going to start things out. As always, I need to remind you that the at least the main session is live streamed and recorded. So I wanted to start out by presenting the rough agenda for today. We're going to start out with a little bit of a review, a very quick review of the history. And then I think we'd like to go over the mission statement and think about how to build a case for funding of GLIMPRINT with the deliverable of those two items. Then we'd like to talk about possible early deliverables. What could we do now, and maybe on a slightly longer time scale that would be useful to the world? Everything from discussing an annual meeting, strategic plan, education and outreach strategies. And then we'd like to have that list of early deliverables. Then we'd like to set up some breakout sessions so that we could have people work on a couple of those deliverables. And then think about funding opportunities for making those deliverables a reality. And then after that, we would like to hear from people and move forward. So just a bit of history for those of you who have not been with us the whole time. Back in 2020, COVID epidemic showed that mathematical modeling was used a lot in the epidemiology arena, but there was a lot less understood about human in-host response to viral infection. And there was a feeling that we really needed to be able to build better models of viral response and immune response to be ready for a future pandemic. And we started talking about this in early summer of 2020. And Reinhard and I set up the IMAG MSM working group in multi-scale modeling and viral pandemics in the summer of 2020. And that's been running ever since. Tom took over from Reinhard as co-lead in May of 2022. And that IMAG page is still there. We were one of the most active working groups ever in the IMAG MSM community. And that's been, I think, a source of great satisfaction. The working group had a number of early successes. I'm certainly not going to go over all of them. If I did, it would take an hour at least. There were more than 40 opinion pieces, scientific articles, and reviews published by working group members working as teams. Some of them are listed here, and that's just to show the variety of topics and areas and the variety of people involved, not to eliminate anyone because there were many that I'm not showing here. There were numerous grants to individuals and groups within the working group. Tom's Digital Twin Innovation Hub is one of the bigger ones. We've had more than 150 virtual seminars online, and we've created an effective community. And people have said that this has been a resource for them to build connections, and that IMAG page has been something that people use as a resource. Why working group to GLIMPRINT? Well, the working group discussions rapidly showed that there was a need for modeling and understanding of human immune response more generally. And the idea that models of individual immune systems, that is digital twins, as a paradigm for understanding and control could be important goes back pretty early. Already, we did this editorial, Reinhardt and Jim Sluka and I did this editorial in Science back in March of 2021. So less than 6 months after the founding of the working group, proposing the idea of using digital twins in viral infection. Reinhardt has really run with this and published a series of articles building digital twins, wrote a roadmap, for example, with many of the community members. And we've certainly, through discussions and seminars and papers, identified a lot of the challenges and opportunities that are involved in creating effective human immune digital twins. And it's felt strongly that our community does need a voice in the evolving conversation on digital twins. We felt that we had something important to say. And some of the challenges involved in digital twins are the complexity of the models, the fact that we're dealing with stochastic models, so validation is difficult, the need to integrate information from a whole variety of sources, and the fact that it's not going to really be possible to do these as individual research projects. We're going to have to work collaboratively to do this. And it was decided about a year and a half ago that it would be useful to have a nonprofit organization that could help realize these aims. And so the Global Alliance for Immune Prediction and Intervention, GLIMPRINT, was incorporated just over a year ago, January 26th, 2023. It was recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit public charity on March 23rd of 2023. And I'm acting for the moment as president, Tom treasurer, Jim Sluka as secretary, and Lorenzo and Reinhardt are the remaining officers of the organization. If you want to be part of that, you're most welcome to let us know. This is a pretty open organization. The aim of this organization is immune digital twins for precision medicine and beyond. This is a picture that was generated for that Science editorial all those years ago. People seem to like it. Reinhardt has some different versions of this picture. And I think that the organization, even though we're small, has already had an effect on steering the discourse worldwide. In particular, Reinhardt and Anna have organized some major meetings, the Forum on Precision Immunology, Immune Digital Twins in Florida in February of last year. That has been published. A meeting report has been published just in the past few weeks on that in NPJ, Systems Biology and Application. Anna had a 3-week intensive, very large-scale workshop in Paris, in whom most community members participated in May and June through June of 2023. There's a draft paper that's about to be submitted, position paper on that. Our voice has made a difference. Early on, we did a white paper on medical digital twins, which was submitted to the National Academies. I don't know exactly how that related to the fact that the National Academies then did a large-scale study of medical digital twins. But January 30th, 2023, they did a major workshop on medical digital twins. Reinhardt was a keynote speaker. Gary Ann and I were also on the panel. That was written up in June of 2023, Opportunities and Challenges for Digital Twins in Biomedical Research. And if you read that document, you'll see that many of the positions that were enunciated through the working group and through GLIMPRINT have been represented there. And so I think it's very clear that the voice of this community has been heard very effectively at a national and international level. The National Academies just the other day, well, 2 months ago, sorry, have recommended increased funding for digital twins. And there's a new relatively recent publication, Foundational Research Gaps and Future Directions for Digital Twins, which talks extensively about biomedical digital twins, not so much specifically immune digital twins, but again, if you read these documents, you'll see that our community and the work we've done around the IDT idea has had a very substantial influence on how these ideas are being framed and discussed in the United States. Who are we? Well, these days we're a core group of about 20 to 30 international researchers, mainly computational mathematical biology, but also representing medicine as well, both academia and industry, a much larger group of people who are involved, although not on a weekly basis. And we represent a wide variety of constituencies, experimental, computational, clinical methodologies. And this certainly could serve as a substantial resource for the development of IDTs and medical digital twins more generally going forward. If we're going to realize that potential, we need to grow and deepen our engagement with our members. And a big part of this meeting is to try to understand how to do that and plan the way forward for that. Where are we headed? Well, to succeed, we need to define what we want to do and then do it. We seem to be very good at talking. Now we also have to be and influencing. And Reinhardt's very good at writing papers, so is Anna. So that's also good. We had an initial mission statement that said, courtesy of Gary Ann, just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I don't know whether that's a slogan we want to maintain or not. But we identified 4 points: facilitate development and application of predictive immune system models, to initiate novel therapeutic designs in precision medicine, facilitate development, technological, scientific, regulatory, and social infrastructure and application, be a first resource for academia, industry, and government in advancing understanding of the immune system. And I think that that's why it's important to make the statement that we have had an influence there. And then potentially facilitate preparedness for future pandemics and emergent diseases. That one may or may not be one we want to keep as a top bullet point. There have been a lot of developments by many organizations and communities. Digital twins, medical digital twins, are a fashionable topic these days. I think that fashion has, to some extent, been supported and perhaps pushed forward by our community. In Europe, you have EDITH initiative associated particularly with Lisbeth Garris, ecosystem digital twins in healthcare. They've built a very impressive roadmap for for medical digital twins, which is available. There's the Virtual Human Development Program in Canada, associated with Maria Abu-Chakra, which is more focused on embryology, but has many digital twin elements. Again, reflects a lot of the philosophy of this community. Anna has led with Reinhardt, the RDA on immune digital twins, which has been funded in Europe, and is going to have a series of meetings. And then we could mention that there are a variety of commercial organizations that have used digital twin concepts related to the immune systems, some of which are very well funded. Something to think about as a way forward. Is that something we want to do? So we need to try to make this GLIMPRINT into a practical reality. One thing that's been discussed a lot is our role as a convener as opposed to a deliverer of specific results. We need to define and communicate the aims, objectives, and resources and value to members that we have. We need some practical short and midterm and long-term deliverables, which establish our utility and differentiate ourselves from these other efforts so that we're complementing rather than competing with other efforts in these fields. Defining an identity, increasing our membership, building bridges to industry and medicine, and then, of course, figuring out ways to fund our activities in the areas of community infrastructure and potentially science. So coming back to the agenda, that was my initial review. I will turn over the discussion for the review of the mission statement, discussion of where to go, and discussion perhaps of how to begin to think about funding to Tom, and we will continue from there. Any questions so far or comments before we start getting to work? Okay, Tom, I'll turn this over to you on the mission statement.
Okay. Thanks, James. So one of the continuous discussions that we've been having as a group is, like James alluded to, who are we? Are we interested in purely facilitating the development of immune digital twins through meetings, webinars, papers, or do we want to actively contribute through raising funding to the development of immune digital twins? And it doesn't have to be a binary answer. We may do facilitation in some areas of this overall goal and also contribute actively to certain aspects. And also we should think about it as whatever our definition and answer is today, that may change in 6 months if new opportunities come up or funding. We're successful in fundraising through grants or whatever it may be. Our mission may change, and so what we come up with today, but we should have some definition or closure on this to help us focus on the specific goals that we can achieve given our decision on whether we're going to be facilitating or actively developing things. So in the chat, I'll post it again. There is a link to our current, yep, thank you for bringing that up. So this is our current vision and mission statement. And we have until noon of Eastern time to discuss and in the end vote on how we would like this to shape us for the next 6 to 12 months and guide us in how we are going to further the field of immune digital twins.
And people shouldn't feel shy about unmuting and speaking up on this.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, maybe Tom, you want to start out by simply reading the current statement. It's also possible, because we talked also about what we call an elevator pitch, that we might want to build a document, start building a document that's a little bit more detailed, that explains what we do, because this is a set of aims. It doesn't talk about activities so much, and so that's something that we're hoping to do in the remainder of this meeting.
And one of the things we need to consider is that we're a relatively small organization, and while all of us have been contributing to our overall vision of developing immune digital twins, it has been primarily under the umbrella of our day jobs, right? And so each of us are stretched for attention, and our bandwidth is narrow to, take on actively other second jobs or third jobs. And so we need to consider that as well in terms of, if we're going to do things actively, we need to consider, what is it that we can actually realistically achieve, given the bandwidth that we have and other responsibility that we have to our daytime or paycheck writers. So like Jim Sluka said the other day, let's prioritize things where we have people signing up to help us accomplish those things. We will likely generate a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, but to make it happen, let's focus on those that people are actually able and willing to contribute to.
And also, this is Chang here from Memory. Right, I guess we're having this. We want to make this like something. I think maybe not in this document, but the others like to make like a first to go resource, right, for these kind of expertise, what have you. And most of us here are modelers, right? I'm thinking that we probably also need to recruit actual immunologists, experimental ones, basic immunology science, and then clinical people as well. So I can ask, I've been collaborating with people, working in the lab, like B cell biology and environmental toxicants effects on B cell. So I guess we should have representatives, right, from those people as well, in addition to just modelers, which are the majority, right, team members, I guess, for this.
So definitely one of the things that we want to talk about later today is how to recruit members and how to be attractive, what our value is to members. Why would somebody join our organization? What would they get out of it? How do we reach out beyond that core modeling community? So I think these are very important issues to bring up.
Okay, good.
Perhaps the question here is this mission statement something that would be appealing to people from clinical or experimental or industrial backgrounds? Or is there something about the way we're phrasing it here that might not be attractive to them? If somebody read this, would they want to join it, for example?
The term digital twin is not included in the mission statement. Is that on purpose?
I think at the time, so this mission statement was developed a year ago. I think there was a lot of hesitation on using the immune digital twin, but I think that the field has shifted forward, and I think the term has been, it appears to have been fully embraced, and everybody's running forward with it. So that's a good observation, and I would suggest that we do include it at this stage.
Yeah, we can put that probably toward the end, make this as one of our ultimate, right, goal or whatever, in there.
Well, already in the vision, I mean, we could say immune digital twin in the vision. I think that I may be the reason or one of the reasons that we were hesitant with the digital twin, because I tend to be a purist. When I say digital twin, I want there to be a real-time data feed. But in fact, much of the world just uses digital twin to be a personalized model. with sub level of data feed. And so perhaps instead of saying computational models of the immune system, we could say immune digital twins. But this is something we could discuss. Reinhardt, what's your feeling at this point?
So I think, I mean, digital twins is somewhat specific, and I don't see any reason why GLIMPRINT should be focused on just that. There are many other things that can be done. There are many other sort of modeling projects that are not personalized that are extremely valuable. That would be my feeling.
So should we have an and so that it's clear that, because I think the issue that's being raised is that it's not clear that people will understand that if we say computational models of the immune system, that also includes the idea of an immune digital twin. And so I think that was the so Reinhardt, you and I think are more in the same camp on this one, but this is something to discuss as a community.
So maybe instead of crossing out predictive immune system models, we could mention immune digital twins later in a later sentence. And explicitly like an immune digital twin infrastructure. So it's something that will support a variety of immune digital twins. So there might be different groups might have their own different emphases when they are creating their immune digital twins.
Let me just say, while I have my microphone on, I put some interesting things in the chat. I think that might be relevant to people.
Maybe also for to include the earlier comment about including immunologists and clinicians, maybe we should make that clear in the mission statement so that when people read it, they say, oh, I don't do modeling, so this is not for me. In the sentence that say we strive to facilitate, I lost it now, but the explicitly say what our multidisciplinary approach is. It's to include immunologists, clinicians, experimentalists, and modelers.
Yes. We lost your screen share, James.
Sorry, Tom, could you do the screen share for me, please? Take it over for a second.
Yep.
I didn't mean to. I wanted to look at the document that Reinhardt had shared, and I realized I couldn't do that while I had the screen share on. So that was John. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, listening just in the last couple of minutes, when you're talking about the membership and what the immune digital twin would be, that we need to be careful that it's not considered a digital twin in isolation from all of the other medical component digital twins, and that somehow in the discussions and the presentations when we're talking about this group, that we don't create the perception that if you're not an immunologist, then this isn't for you. That somehow the representation of the group has to visually represent that the immune system is affected by all kinds of other things that happen in other systems, and very much what happens in other systems gets affected by the immune system. So how do we represent that although our focus may be on the immune system, that we recognize that we need the participation of other medical disciplines or biological specialties, and without them, we develop a digital twin that's in isolation, and it might represent some theoretical or statistical processes that affect immunology, the immune response of an individual, but it's not going to be a model or a digital twin of any individual unless the links are there to connect it to that same individual's other systems.
Agreed. I think we need to work on that as well. We also need to work on addressing earlier comment that it's not perceived as this is something for just computational biologists and modelers. So we have some work to do on that aspect. Given that we have 25 minutes left in this session, I would like to take our attention back to the initial question, and that is, what do we want to facilitate versus what do we want to actively achieve? Where do we, not just do we want to actively achieve, but more importantly, what can we realistically achieve? And that will also, we will work on that in the next session, where we will need to identify specific deliverables. And so those will then help us solidify how we think about facilitation versus active contributions and developments.
I would suggest, I think I already mentioned that interoperability is a goal that won't happen from just individual groups, or I think James already said that at the beginning. And so some kind of infrastructure that facilitates interoperability, I think, will have to be done by some, either top down from some funding agency, or basically it will have to come together from a group like this, and it seems like our group is ideally positioned to do that. And without such an infrastructure, there's just going to be scattered individual efforts that are not going to cohere.
That's correct. That is perhaps the biggest sort of effort. How is there a way, so that would require a large amount of funding. And I guess I would say, number one, who wants to lead that? Do we have somebody who can take that on and pursue that in our group here? And or number two, one strategy could be how do we reduce this to bite-sized chunks that could lead towards that over time? And these bite-sized chunks could be led by various people as well. Again, I think we need to focus on what is realistic, what can we achieve. Otherwise, we'll keep talking about it, and it's going to be difficult to make it happen in the end.
So, this is John. One of the things that has to happen pretty soon is expanding the awareness that this group exists.
Yes.
If I don't know technically if this kind of survey could be done, but could we create some kind of a survey that is designed to go to other anatomical physiological disciplines, asking them, inviting them to help inform us with what are the most important immunological issues that face you as a cardiologist, as a nephrologist, and if some kind of survey could be made up that people could afford the time to respond to, that is kind of open-ended, that says, we are actively looking for those areas where you may be developing a digital twin for cardiology, but you already know that there are some immunology things that you're going to have. What are those? And so a survey of that kind both informs us, it shows us where there might be some colleagues in other disciplines that could become accessible and become part of our group early on, because they indicate that there's something that we have some people that we think might be able to help with. So that would be active, open. It's a project. It has an end time. It has a report.
Okay. Thank you, John. I added that as one of the potential early deliverables for our 12 o'clock or 12 o'clock session.
We may have added it twice because I just typed it in as well.
Okay. Okay. And I will also add the one mentioned before on creating infrastructure for interoperability. So going back again to the question, do we want to be facilitators? Seems to be maybe a mix of things, but again, so there is an idea on actively developing the infrastructure for interoperability, which is a major task. I would argue that that's not an early win type deliverable. That can be a long-term goal. And again, I think it will be important that we reduce that down to smaller pieces that we can achieve at a time. More in terms of what we can do today. What do we want to do today versus what we're facilitating interactions between us. We're facilitating information sharing through the webinars. We have regular meetings. We are, on the other hand, doing by writing collaborative papers, by organizing workshops, and of course, organizing those webinars. Are we happy with that? Do we want to facilitate more? Do we want to, and how, where, or do we want to do more? And also where that we can do today?
It's quiet out there.
We mentioned hackathons in the planning for this. So that's something that's concrete, that is not just convening. I mean, is the idea of a hackathon is that something comes out at the end of it. So that's a question. Just in principle, would we hold hackathons? That seems, like a smaller question than, will we build a infrastructure?
hackathons to do what? Build models, build standards, write papers? What do you think?
Well, but you wanted to answer the question, are we a convener or are we more? So if the idea is that we're only a convener, then the other question is moot,
Mhm.
right? So first, if we decide that we only want to be conveners, then a hackathon, for anything is like beyond our, our scope.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I don't think I wanted to again reemphasize, I don't think this is black and white, right? I don't think we have to be a convener or a actively developing something. It can be a spectrum. In some areas we'll convene, in some areas we'll do. And so yeah, okay.
I would have said being a hackathon is a convener role. That if we umbrella people to do a hackathon or a contest, that's a convener role. If we ourselves decide what the hackathon topic is, then we're doing something. We're more in the active role. But if we solicit people to suggest hackathon ideas, that's a convener. So I wouldn't say that there's this hard distinction. A hard distinction would be we're going to get $1 billion to build an immune digital twin. That would be definitely not a convener role. Writing an R01 grant would probably not be a convener role. So those are our possibilities. Reinhard, please go ahead.
I think John had his hand up before me.
I think he already spoke. He just has his hand up from before.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
so let me,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I did have one other. I heard the standard word a couple of minutes ago, and you all know that's close to my heart. In the last couple of years, there has been a lot of development and a lot of discussion about standards for creditable models. And models that cannot be determined to be creditable don't spend a whole hell of a lot of time working on how to make them interoperability because nobody's going to be allowed to use them. That if they're not creditable first, then you're wasting your time almost. Taking that here as a new group coming forward, looking at the kind of things that we might want to have webinars or, to say, what kind of retraining do those of you that have a long history in the mathematics and the computer modeling need to maybe catch up with the implications and the detail of the emerging standards? And they're coming, they're worldwide. So suggesting that another possibility would be to develop a set of workshops or online something where we invite people from the standards development community to talk with us and a bunch of other people online about different aspects of those standards and how they might specifically apply to the kind of models we would be building. And I read the standards, and I've been around that stuff for a long time. I understand those, but I don't necessarily understand how you apply that to a specific model of some component of the immune system. Well, workshops or meetings that we might host that do that could attract attention to this group and be a way to involve other modelers in a product that we put online, because we as a group are going to make a commitment to educate ourselves to be able to do our work to the emerging standards.
So I guess those are good points. I don't know whether those are mission statement points, unless, is there something specific you want in the mission statement that would reflect that?
It would be to establish emerging standards for model credibility as a core component of the discipline in the application of models to immune system or something. That
Right.
would be a mission statement, that we as a group want to be able to stand up and say, wait a minute, we're taking a pause here. We're going to understand what some of this language in the standards means, and we are going to agree and commit among ourselves that we're going to conform to that level of requirement so that the things that we do are going to be valuable to other people. And so it would be somehow incorporating that, developing the whatever that makes that very important part of the mission of this particular digital twin specialty group.
So we'll go to Reinhard.
Yeah, so some of you know me as being sometimes overly practical when it comes to things. And so let me just say what I've heard so far. In the beginning, James made a really nice summary of all the things that have happened as part of the working group. There were papers, there were workshops, there were other things, and that was great. Now, Tom, you made a good point that, of course, we all have day jobs, and whatever we do, by and large, needs to fit within these day jobs. And I think when you look back at all the things that have been done as part of this working group, all the stuff that James listed and a bunch of other things, it is because somebody did it because it fit somehow into their vision of their day job. And I think that's what's going to happen going forward, right? It's I think what we're doing here is great in the sense that we sort of make an inventory of things that one could do, and maybe things that should get done. But ultimately, they only get done if somebody actually does them, and somebody actually does them if it fits into their program of research, and then they will do it no matter what. But hopefully within the framework of GLIMPRINT. So I think we can sort of take two routes here. One is we continue making this list of things that we could do. Right now, when it comes to digital twins, which is part of what we're talking about, there are already a number of such lists, right? We have a number of number of papers that say, here's the stuff that needs to be done. So one can start there. The other one is if we really want to get a sense of what actually is likely to happen, it's really a matter of different people saying, this is something I want to do. And we can do it in the context of GLIMPRINT, or they can have a GLIMPRINT imprimatur or some other aspect of it. But ultimately, that's what's going to come out, I think, of today or other discussions like this. You have some list of people that say, okay, I'm going to do this. And if you don't have a list like this, then likely nothing will happen.
Yes.
Right.
In discussions like these are great. We've had in different contexts, we've had many of those, and I enjoy them. And given that a bunch of people come back to these discussions, I think many people enjoy them, but it has to go beyond that.
Absolutely.
That was our goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe we got a little sidetracked because the mission we weren't expecting, the mission statement was more, is this okay? Is there something urgently that needs changed? Rather than to try to put the laundry list of things to do into the mission statement.
Well, I think what it's emerging now. What might have to happen to build on what Reinhard was saying is that exactly the things that will get done are the things that fit with our day jobs, and perhaps we can actually it seems like from the list of things that people have mentioned or have been doing and will be defined in the next, we'll start talking about those more explicitly in 7 minutes. Perhaps those will actually define our and solidify our mission statement in the end, because we will in the next hour focus on things that we want to do and we can do and will do, because those things fit with our day jobs. And then maybe at the end we can come back and look at, okay, we have these things people are signed up for, we will be doing, and then we can go back then and solidify our mission statement that will actually represent our capability and willingness of people to do things today. Jim.
Yes, we have to keep focused. Standards right now are totally irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. We need a mission statement. We'd like to have an elevator pitch. As I put in the chat, our only goal right now is from my point of view, is we have to get out of our day jobs. We stay in our day jobs, we're not going to get anything done. We have to get funding one way or the other. There's no way to hold this group together without funding. So we need a rock solid mission statement. We need one for science. We need one for what we have right now. You sure as hell can't give to a politician or Gates or anybody like that. It's much too technical. So let's get a technical mission statement. Let's get a boilerplate letter that we could give to somebody that's, paragraph, 2 paragraphs, and let's make a decision about going for an R14 or R21 or some other meeting grant. And everything else is irrelevant. I just don't want to hear it. It's not contributing to what we're trying to do.
Veronica.
I just have a comment about the very first sentence in the mission. I feel like how it's written right now, we are really understating what was done during last several years, because the mission say establish a global multidisciplinary alliance. I would rewrite it and say that we are growing global multidisciplinary alliance already, focusing on facilitating immune model development for clinical implications. And then I would say something like we bring researchers from different, I would do it in presence. Mm-hmm. So we bring researchers from different fields to, brainstorm exciting problems in immunology and medicine, and to educate new generation of multidisciplinary scientists through weekly seminars and educational workshops. But I would do it more in presence, because we are already global alliance, right? We are meeting for many years now. And for me, it would sound more kind of vivid, more actionable, like we are doing stuff.
Good points. Thank you. Okay. Leonard, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Are there other organizations that you're aware of that we can look at or we could think about and as like templates for what we're trying to accomplish here? Are there other organizations in mind that you've looked at that have motivated your thinking on this?
A few had been mentioned before. I believe Reinhard had pointed us to a couple, if I remember correctly. Chantal as well. I don't know that we have modeled it after any particular one. Kind of, I've had. It's hard, if we're facilitators, then that would fit with a professional society sort of a model. But I think we're not trying to box ourselves into any one, and that I guess that's why we're having that discussion. And I think from the discussion, there is desire to do things, to get funds and to accomplish things more actively, which is not a professional society necessarily. So I don't know how to answer that question. I don't have an answer.
Okay, I mean, I'm just asking because like, I don't have a lot of experience with these things or anything, but one society that I've been connected to is what's called the Fanconi Anemia Research Fund. You know, Fanconi anemia is this very rare disease. So it's a private foundation. They take donations to fund themselves. They fund research projects. You know, the projects can be up to $100,000 or more per project. So they have a board of directors. They meet regularly to review proposals. So they fund research. They have an annual meeting that moves from city to city. That's pretty well attended. Poster sessions and speakers and that sort of thing. They also have this is a very patient-centric thing. So they have a network to connect patients from different parts of the world, that sort of thing. So they are like doing lots of different things. They're both acting as a convener, facilitator, as well as executing things via funding of
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
This sounds somewhat similar, maybe, to what we're thinking about here, but I'm not sure if that's. Could you imagine a future where this organization is granting, is the one that's actually, rather than applying for grants, is actually giving grant funds to maybe fund pilot projects to build models of different parts of the immune system or develop technologies, that sort of thing?
That would be definitely in the area of we want to do something, and that would require seeking large-scale funding. And I think those are both reasonable things to try to do. It'll require a lot of energy on the part of the fundraisers to get the money to do it. And so if there were a group of people who said, we are going to commit to raising the money, to going to Gates and others to raise the money, we could do that. But then we have to have a pitch. In other words, what is our value? Why should Gates give us money to give to other people rather than to give it directly, for example? In other words, what is our special expertise or our special ability that would make us the right people to do that? But I think
Sure.
it's
Yeah,
excellent point.
absolutely.
Because we develop models that follow a discipline which results in products that can be accredited by other people for reuse. That when you fund something that's done by people that are committed to the purpose of this particular subset of the digital twin, you're funding a group whose products are going to be something that you can study, you can understand, you can see the assumptions, you can see the tests, you can see where the data came from, and you can make a decision that you can use the product of this group inside your models or beside your models, and just start right out by setting that high standard, because increasingly the government funding agencies are going to have a problem if they don't start requiring it. And if we stand up and say that's just how we're going to do it, then we're going to be way ahead.
So we have reached the end of our first hour on the mission statement, or on the mission of GLIMPRINT. So it appears there is going to be a mix of doing and convening. And so in this next hour, let's work on establishing some of the early deliverables that there is interest and in doing, actively getting those done, that will help us further define who we can be and what we can accomplish in the near term.
What I can do is I can describe what I'm going to do.
Right.
And I mean, I will do it. At this point, I don't see that I actually need help in doing it. So I mean, whatever you want me to do, I can I can take 10 minutes and describe that, or I can describe
be
it
fine.
later in some different setting, whatever you think will work.
Okay, I mean, the way, well, let's. I'm okay with that either way. I guess I didn't understand from the way we talked about it the last time that was where you were with that.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess I was maybe not entirely clear last time.
Guess we're waiting for Tom to come back. And then I guess the question is there anything else in the laundry list that you want to do anyway that would be things that should be identified?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, those workshops are sort of what I'm planning to do. Beyond that, I don't know that I have bandwidth to do anything in addition.
And do you want to use a GLIMPRINT brand on them? Are you going to use an RDA brand on them? How do you want to do that?
Well, I would like to use both of those and Edith in addition. I think that would be great if it was sponsored by those three. And I hope that Edith might provide some infrastructure to actually run a meeting like this. So yeah.
So those things could be discussed.
Okay.
I mean, first to define it so that everybody understands what the proposal is, and then discuss how to purchase support.
Okay. So, just catching up on that.
You want to put the agenda back up or the rolling minutes back up?
Yep. Okay, so we are in session 2. So this let's establish early deliverables that we are practically able to achieve. There had been, I took a few notes on ones that were mentioned today. We also have a number that had been mentioned over the last several meetings, and also ones that over the course of our meetings, not just the last few meetings. Those are listed here. Unless there are suggestions on how we get started on this, I would say let's discuss those that we are interested in and able to contribute to starting today, and that we are committing to leading individually and or in groups, in subgroups. Some of the ones that had resonated, that had been mentioned by multiple people recently were education and outreach events or efforts, whether it's workshops or meetings. So we could start with that. We can also set up small groups or breakout group discussions for those who are interested in centering around specific events or specific efforts. How would you like to proceed? So I'll pick on Jim, maybe. Jim, you've mentioned the need to get a non-technical mission statement, an elevator pitch, for the purpose of attracting larger funders. Is that something you'd be willing to take on and lead?
Well, I was leaning a little bit more towards a more of a layman type mission statement. I think we need to make a decision about whether or not we're going to go for a meeting grant, conference grant.
So, okay.
So I don't know where to start there.
Yeah, so I guess that flips things for us. So when we say we should focus on getting funding, the question is, what do we want to get funding for? So that goes back to, what do we want to accomplish?
Right.
And if we have people who are taking the lead on those specific accomplishments, then those groups would decide, can we do it ourselves or do we need funding? If we need funding, where do we get the funding, and then develop the strategy to get that funding. So maybe going back to, what are you all, everybody interested in accomplishing? What are you interested in, and would you like to help with?
That
You want to
actually
just go
around the
through
room.
everybody's names?
Yeah,
and
why don't we go
just
around the
ask?
room and ask that
Yeah.
question?
So I'll start. I'd say that as much as I don't want to do it, I'd be willing to work on a funding grant for a conference. And that's kind of the low-hanging fruit for some money. Get people together, get people talking. The other thing is try to help with getting the GLIMPRINT webpage going a little bit better. Maybe that's where I think we could really use a layman mission statement. So those two things, the GLIMPRINT website and the R13, R24, whatever it would be in terms of a meeting grant.
Thank you, Jim. I will funding grants for a meeting. And are you talking about annual recurring meeting or just the first meeting?
No, I think if you're going to do a funding meeting grant, you do it for 2 or 3 years, whatever the limit is for NIH. I think it's 3 years. You could do, we could literally propose 6 meetings over 3 years or something like that if we wanted to. So as long term as we possibly could.
Perfect. Anybody else? Who else is interested in working with Jim on this? I will add myself, Jim, though I can contribute to that, but wherever you need me.
Yeah.
The challenge of a meeting grant is getting, 20 letters of support or something like that. And we can start off with everybody in this group, and that, spins us up real quick to 20-ish people. But we have to get beyond that. That's the thing that's going to take the most effort, I think.
I mean, for a single meeting, right? If we wanted to do something at Leiden, that's an easy proposal to write. But that doesn't give us much funding. That basically gives us a location and a space and some meals. It doesn't pay for travel, those kind of things. I think you do have to decide what kind of meeting is it you're going to try to fund.
Yeah, get a group together and decide, when are the due dates.
Yeah. And we can start working on that, in the next hour, for those who are interested in doing that. And we can start individual meetings on this specific deliverable to make it happen. And developing a strategy and all of that. There are a number of different funding opportunities that I'm thinking of that we should target multiple ones. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Reinhardt said he had to leave in a few minutes, so maybe we should
Okay,
have.
Reinhardt. Yep.
Yes, I'm sorry if I'm upsetting your agenda, but I have to step out for about half an hour or so. And so maybe I can talk about what I briefly mentioned at last week's steering group meeting. What I want to do builds on the workshop that we had here in Florida about a year ago. Some of you were there. It was a 2-day workshop with about 20 people and focused on immune digital twins, what is needed to do that. It was the format was a bit different. There were no PowerPoint slides. There was just a whiteboard. And so it was really 2 days full of great discussions, and we made a careful, really high quality recording of all of these. And you can get those on the website. They're available. What I want to do is to organize one or ideally several sort of 1-day virtual workshop / course type things that build on that. As James mentioned in the beginning, an article on that workshop just appeared a few weeks ago. And there'll be a second one. I just returned the page proofs on a second one that will appear in Frontiers in Digital Health in the next week or two. That has some use cases of projects that could lead to digital twins. And I would like to use the recordings and the 2 papers as the basis on which to organize 1-day international workshops around maybe infectious diseases, modeling issues, cancer. So for each of these, maybe pick 1 or 2 or 3 of these recordings. The way the presentations went is essentially a 15-minute presentation by the speaker, and then a very vigorous discussion around various issues. And each speaker presented sort of a 5-year plan on what needs to be done. So there's a list of action items. And what I'd like these workshops to be is focus on some of these action items and begin to really put some substance into it and some teeth into it. So it could serve in part as an introductory course. And I would like, whatever recordings we use, I would like to ask the presenters to put in an hour or 2 in the workshop to answer additional questions, to elaborate, to give updates, etc. It's relatively easy to do. It does not require funding. I would hope that we could get a substantial number of people, anywhere between 50 and 100, to participate. I would like it to be sponsored by GLIMPRINT, sponsored by the RDA working group, sponsored by Edith, ideally. I would hope that maybe Edith or RDA can provide infrastructure to actually carry this out. And one would have to define sort of a little bit what the actual products would be that come out of it. It could be a paper, it could be a list of resources, whatever. And so I've thought fairly carefully about it. I have some good ideas. I think it will happen maybe sometime in the summer or early fall, depending on different kinds of deadlines. So that's my plan, sort of educationally, for a GLIMPRINT sponsored education.
Thank you, Reinhardt. And are you looking for others to help you co-organize that? Anybody interested in helping Reinhard?
So I think at this point I'm fine, but anybody who is interested in being involved, I'd be happy to include in the planning for sure.
Okay, perfect. And so, yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Reinhard.
And so, as I said in the steering group meeting, the meeting was fascinating. I really absolutely enjoyed it, and the articles certainly don't do justice to what happened there. And so I encourage everybody, independent of these workshops, to take a look at at the recordings. Some of them, there's a list of speakers on the website, so you can see what happened there, and there's hyperlinks to the recordings.
At the least, we should publicize those recordings on the GLIMPRINT website.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, one thing that we really need somebody to do is get the GLIMPRINT website working.
Jim's taking the lead on it. So we've got somebody signed up for that, and so we'll make it happen.
Because it should at least advertise the seminar, the Reinhardt's materials, our materials, the papers, basically migrate the material from the working group here to it, and then go forward. Ruchira.
I was really somewhat discouraged by what just happened. I suggested that we talked about whether we want to do an infrastructure for interoperability, and that was just shot down. I mean, to put something in the mission statement is not the same as saying that we're going to do it in 2 years or even 5 years. You know, nothing happens without starting, but it seems like, you know, so I don't really know what to say.
I'm not sure that, Ruchira, I'm not sure that we're saying that interoperability isn't very important. The question was whether that belongs in the mission statement as a bullet item, and we didn't ever get to the point of finalizing a mission statement. So if you want to have if you want to lead something on interoperability, if you want to propose something you would like to do in that respect, now is the time to do that. It was more of a question of when that discussion should happen, not whether that discussion should be discussed.
I see. Well, that can only happen though with the cooperation of the groups that are interoperating. So I mean, if I were someone who was you know, who was trying to get, you know, work from 2 PIs, for instance, to actually work together, then those 2 PIs have to, you know, consider that to be a goal, because it will require some work from their labs to communicate with each other. I would be like an intermediary. So I don't really know how much support there is. So if there isn't support for doing that, then that makes sense that, okay, we won't make that a goal, but we like, no one ever, you know, it was never asked whether. So anyway, I guess now I'm asking, it will require, it can't just be like one person will do it. It's by
Yes.
its nature, it's a collaborative thing.
I completely, yeah, sorry.
It needs leadership, though,
Hmm.
and presumably it needs some funding to make it happen as well at some level. At least it requires somebody to organize some meetings and discussions, and that to begin with. And it happens that the interoperability means different things to different people, so I want to be careful. But I have currently an NSF grant, small one, and the theme of interoperability is a big part of that. And so it's an area that I'm quite interested in. It's not, however, specifically an immune digital twin problem for me. It's a broader problem of multi-scale model interoperability, like the things we were hearing about last week in the talk from the Netherlands. And so I'm certainly happy to talk to you more about that, whether people feel that that should be a focus here, and if so, what we would do. In other words, what would you specifically propose to do is the question. It's a statement that it's like a little bit, John wants to say, well, we should be standards based and verifiable. Those are good goals, but those are good mission statement goals. But what is it we specifically will do is the question. And so, Ruchira, if you could try to maybe in the next hour, you could try to refine this and make a proposal. What is it you want to do in the area of interoperability? Or you think that GLIMPRINT could do in the area of interoperability?
There need to be at least two. So I guess, James, you're saying you're one. There need to be at least two groups who have something that they want to interoperate. Otherwise, it's just a vague thing, right?
Right. And so that could be, James may be one here, but we have 14 people here, right? But the community is much larger, and so if you wanted to take this on as a task to find other people who are interested in making things work between their groups at the minimum of the two, like you mentioned, the group, between the working group on multi-scale modeling and viral pandemics and GLIMPRINT, there is a few hundred people, and our RDA and the Paris workshop also gives us a much bigger reach. And so there is certainly an opportunity, and it's an important one. I'm sorry if I somehow gave the impression that it was dismissed. I didn't mean to do that at all. What I meant to allude to was that it is a massive task and a very long-term one, and it certainly can be accomplished, but we need somebody who's gonna be the lead on it, and it's gonna take probably it's not gonna happen in 6 months likely. Would you like to then take it on and pursue this?
Well, I would be willing to look for people to join it. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, like my participation is also contingent on, if like nobody else does it, then it's not possible to do. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So would you? Would maybe call it a develop interoperability strategy?
Sure. Yeah.
Would that be a more of a smaller bite-sized chunk that we can then, based on that, whatever you come up with strategy, then we can go from there to better understand how feasible it is under what circumstances and what timeline.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
Sharif?
Well, I need to
Oh, sorry, John.
conflict arise.
John, do you want to?
Yeah, I had a conflict arise, but commenting on Richard's concern, yeah, the interoperability thing haunts like all the modelers, and the idea that if two modelers building a model get together and they're able to make them work together, that's an interoperable model. Now, that's an example of two models working together. Interoperable models need to be able to interoperate, with more than just one thing, or else all you did was build one bigger model. And the issue of good practice and creditable work in documenting the way a model is built is the first step in its becoming interoperability. Interoperability is not a data issue. We can pass data between systems.
So,
there's
John,
all kinds of ways to do it.
John, I think that those are good points, but they should be reserved for the breakout session. In other words,
Yeah.
Can we add you? Can we add you to work with Ruchira about on the interoperability
at the
strategy?
moment, I'm trying to make a list of things that need to be addressed, and then the next hour people could go out and address them. And I don't want to cut off the discussion, but I also want to make sure that all the ideas are recorded first, so that everybody who's in the room gets
that's good. I'm good with that, and I would be happy to talk with her. And the other question I have is,
John, you're also talking about model credibility, and that's a sort of a separate thing from interoperability. Are you saying you want to lead a group to do model credibility?
No, the credibility and interoperability go together.
Maybe.
I don't think you. I mean, yeah, I would consider a group on achieving credibility and models for reuse.
Things like, for
if it
example,
needs to be
provenance.
separate.
Provenance are not the
Yep.
same as necessarily reusability. That's a separate issue. But again, these are pretty technical, but that's fine. The point is to hear what people are interested in.
Yeah,
At
thank
this
you.
point, the goal is to hear what people are interested
Okay.
Shuri, if you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to propose something in lines that comes before interoperability is the standard itself, right? So once you have a standard, then you can think of how it could be interoperable. I think we are in a phase of this digital twin development where things are not yet fully developed. Things are getting to this. I mean, people are excited about and trying to develop things. Different, so I mean, groups are working. So it's high time we kind of come up with a standard that we define how we share or define a model so that it can be exchanged with different groups. And I mean, of course, interoperability is here, and then how do you use common terminologies, ontologies, control vocabularies, so that we agree upon how we define things, and this would be easier to communicate more with the others, and also support the tool developers in defining these, within their framework, so that we can execute models in different frameworks and so on. So I think many tools, when they are developed, and it's a bit difficult to develop standards. So if we propose, not just by ourselves, but also engage with other groups and come up with standards for defining for the definition of the digital twins and so on. So maybe that would have a bigger impact.
So you clearly have, a lot of expertise in all of this, and also, if I'm not mistaken, it fits into your day job too. Would you like, is it okay to add you to Ruchira and John to develop a interoperability strategy?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're free to redefine interoperability to include standards, to include back-end things, to include whatever you validation or provenance and traceability. These are all things that can be discussed there. The key thing about this, of course, is that this is something that will require a lot of time, effort, and money. And so one has to have a strategy for delivering it. But I think it's a great topic. And certainly, if we could do that, if GLIMPRINT could help further that, that would be great.
Mhm.
Great. Who's next on our list? Chantal, I think.
Yes, I still feel I'm kind of on the outside of the immune system aspect with what I do. I never even use the word immune in any paper I write. So I don't really feel like I'm in a position to lead any deliverable that GLIMPRINT would work on as their priorities. I think at this stage, I would probably be able to provide more inputs once we have something developed on the immune system. And then, like it was mentioned earlier, I think by John, is that then you have to fit that immune system into the other systems of the body. And one, would be, for example, because that's what I do, the reaction of inhaled particulates that deposit on a lung tissue, how does that affect the immune system of the lung tissue? But if you don't have the immune system model developed, this is putting the horse in front of the carriage. So at this stage, I feel like I don't really have anything that makes sense to propose. I don't think it should be a priority until we have some kind of an immune digital twin of some sort.
What about Chantal? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you clearly also have experience running, leading a professional society, right?
Yep.
Is there anything that you would be interested in helping us to move GLIMPRINT forward as an organization? You know, from a administrative or strategic side of things that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a scientifically focused effort.
Yeah, I can help with that. I mean, on the one society I was leading, we mainly get our funding from membership dues. We try with GLIMPRINT, but I think until we have some tangible things listed on the website, we're not going to attract a lot of members. And the other one was through developing webinars or conference and find sponsors from industry to sponsor a webinar. That may be an avenue. When you do a webinar and it's something of interest of a company, ask them if they're willing, you know, to give you. We went between it, depending the size of the company, but that's how we kind of get some money. And maybe what we had there, it's then we could pay an admin person, which is really like we all mentioned, it's been said over and over. It's like we all have day jobs and we don't have the bandwidth to maintain that. I mean, James gracefully agreed to start that, but it's not sustainable if he's the only one, you know, in charge.
Would you be willing to join us on discussions of updating the website, you know, providing from whatever perspective, you know, whether it's on strategy on how to really better articulate what we have done, what we're doing? And would you be interested in helping us defining more concretely, sort of in a action item type way, what our fundraising, sponsorship, fundraising roadmap could look like?
Yeah, I can provide input to that. I'm not sure because I don't know the key players in the immunology world. So it really takes a team that have contacts in that world. For me, was like aerosol delivery in pharmaceuticals, and so we had contact, and that's how. Because my experience is that if you know the people before you ask money, you're much more likely to get it. If you go and they don't know who you are, and if you don't align in your work with what they do, it's a waste of effort. So it's really identify among our group, and we have 100 participants, I mean, or people that are interested, at least in the IMAC workshop networking group, can ask for, you know, if anybody has contact and is willing.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello. I have one on the side of the hackathons and challenges. And one thing I will be happy to do to participate in and lead if appropriate, it will be having a separate working group where we meet among some of the people here or whoever wants to participate and to decide about the topic that we feel are important and agreed, so that the community were to agree on main project that could be and should be delivered and try to be deployed, or hackathons that will be needed to deploy those, and then go back as the community which to prioritize, create then a framework for the project, actually timing, how many, I don't know, days an hackathon should last for deploying this and this step, deciding which frameworks, deciding, I don't know, the scales that are more important, which other scale we should connect to, and finally get back and see if perhaps other initiatives that are already present. I don't know. I participated at the CompuCell course. There are, I'm sure, other courses where we can kind of piggyback and say, okay, we have a framework. This might be good for a 2-day hackathon if as a template project that can be used within this course. And that is, I think, I will be happy to do later on or try to frame if
Okay.
it's needed.
So these would
Okay.
be model development, model definition and development hackathons, to be clear.
Yes, I think so. But I think we should decide. But I will propose, for example, we need probably something very generalistic, a model of inflammation. So this small working group should also see what's available already and see what we should do and what could be the next step. But we need, for example, a generalistic model of inflammation before we do anything else.
Love it. I'd be curious to explore that with you. I can't, I don't know if I'll commit, but definitely happy to, be part of the, at minimum, the initial conversations and see how it evolves.
And maybe add the word as example of inflammation as an example of what a topic. Because I think hackathon by itself could be anything. Whereas if you say it's a model development hackathon, specification development hackathon, again, that could be done at Leiden. If you propose a week-long, one of their, they have a hackathon format. You could do there 5 days bringing people together to build models is possible there.
So then having a separate small group that decide those, at least the worst case, we will have a document that frames a little problem, some problem that for sure will be useful for later if we cannot achieve stuff.
So your initial goal is to define a set of hackathon topics.
Or strategy, yeah.
Okay, fine. I just want to be clear about, because Tom is typing, I want to make sure we capture what you're saying.
And then do the best that we can in terms of deployment, obviously. And then I will leave to zip off this time. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lorenzo. This
No
is
problem.
helpful.
Thank you.
Anybody else who's interested in this? Participating, co-leading?
Well, I certainly am, but I don't, my problem is I'm interested in everything, so probably I need to reserve.
Remember the cutoff here is that what can we make, what can we advance forward?
Let's keep going around the room though, because there's still people we haven't heard from. Anna, maybe?
Yeah, you can put me down on the meetings and website. I just don't want to be in charge of anything, but I'm happy to do like menial tasks.
Thank you.
And Tom, I think the website strategy actually kind of linked to the website update, because you need a strategy to update it.
Yeah.
So I think those two bullet points should be made one.
And Jim had multiple things there for meetings, so maybe I will separate this. I will put this like this. I'll reorganize it later. It still doesn't make sense what I just did. So,
Sharon?
Okay. Yep.
I think next.
I can help Jim and in the I have already in both in website updating the strategy and obtain grants for meeting and things like that.
Thank you,
And
Rita.
yeah, and I'm really interested in helping Lorenzo with the hackathons.
Perfect.
Do you have any specific topics you'd like to work on, Rita, or subject areas you feel you'd like to?
For the hackathon, yeah, I like this way of you know, in healing, everything that you if you have a lesion and then you have healing, how inflammation will proceed and influence. This should be inflammation in healing. And then okay.
Love
Right,
it.
'cause inflammation per se is pretty broad, so I think having a context probably makes it a more achievable model.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
In a
So
particular tissue.
wound healing would be wound healing would
Mhm.
be what I would be interested in.
Okay, who else have we not heard from? TJ?
Hi, everyone. Along with some of the interests that Sharif mentioned on interoperability, I'm also interested in more of math modeling and methods and simulation technologies in interoperability. So I would be happy to participate in that group.
Thank you. I got you down there.
Thanks.
I think that comes back to the fact that interoperability can mean all sorts of different things. And so you have to be pretty clear about what kind of interoperability we're talking about. There are many different interesting questions.
And I guess so the first step of that right now of that subgroup is to develop the strategy for that. And so strategy and definitions and scope, I guess. Excellent. With 8 minutes left, we'll keep we haven't heard from Veronica, right?
Yeah.
And she's already.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep. Okay.
I'm in general like to stay within the mission of GLIMPRINT. I would be interested in educational component and also in organizing the meetings. I also feel like we need to build some nice content for the GLIMPRINT website to attract people, and it also could be kind of educational, in the direction of educational. Like for example, creating the collection of some useful, successful models, right, in immunology, dissecting them, discussing them. Ideally, to be sustainable, of course, would be like every week organize some educational, I don't know, journal club style meetings, but that's too much work, right? So that's where my interests.
Okay.
So I don't know. I can.
Well, you had a journal club on immunology modeling for a while, right? You had a weekly meeting on that, a subgroup.
Right. So that's what my subgroup did.
And one thing that what we could try perhaps would be to say that the output of your meeting should be a Jupyter notebook running the ODE model in antimony or something like that, where that could be self-documented with a little bit of instruction. That Jupyter notebook could, if it was in Colab, could be linked from the web page at a one-button execution. So it could be an online execution, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could embody your model in the form of a Python script, for example, that could be then put as a Colab notebook, which then could be executed without anybody downloading anything, web executed.
You mean to do basically the illustration for some of the models, right?
Yeah.
And ideally, we can even like have some models with some changing parameters, so people have like sliders to understand
Right,
what.
exactly, yes.
So something like this, I feel like it would be very useful. Of course, it will require like lots of work, right? So it's not.
And I think that should be perhaps again part of the discussion on the website update and strategy, right? We should develop a roadmap of how do we want to maintain it? Just to start with the basics like that, because right now I don't feel like the mechanism we have or the tools we have are make it easy. So yeah.
But even if like people, for example, go to the GLIMPRINT and somewhere on the very first few pages will be some nice animation where they can play a little bit and see
Yeah.
how.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That would be like terrific, right?
Be huge, yeah.
Yeah. So basically that's two things. So one is kind of educational meetings or organization meetings in general. That's where.
Okay.
And another is
Well, if you had published ODE models you'd like to see replicated, I might be able to tie that in with my fall class, where the students have to replicate models in the form of Jupyter notebooks. So if you suggested a particular simulation that we could do, modulo some limitations, that might be a way of delivering that.
Thank you. So we have one person that we haven't heard from, Huiying. If you're there, any thoughts, ideas, anything you're interested in?
Oh, is that me?
Hi.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm a modeler for B-cell biology, right? So, and I know there's out there's a lot of people actually working on modeling the B-cell response, creating, antibodies. So I don't know if you want to have anything that I could like reach out to those peoples and to seek their interest in, right, joint efforts we're doing here. Is that something that's desirable here?
Expanding the reach of GLIMPRINT to other non-modeling audiences is absolutely of interest. Yeah.
No, non-modeler definitely, but I'm talking about in this case specifically B-cell biology modelers.
Yeah, wherever we can start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely make some.
How would that what would be the deliverable in this context?
I guess it will be something, I don't know. I mean, like how many gonna actually agree or gonna participate in regular meetings like these?
Maybe increasing maybe recruiting some of these folks to give presentations for the webinars and
I think that'll be that'll be definitely a deliverable, I guess. Yeah. And some of them maybe can start to participate in our regular either webinar or meetings like these discussion.
So that would be outreach. And you mentioned that you said B cell is a boy or T cell?
So I'm talking about B cell biology, B cell response. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
anybody else interested in increasing the outreach that we have with other communities?
may I ask the question if we can clarify? Outreach to me is not the same as recruiting new members. Member recruiting to me is a slightly different thing. And it's something we haven't, it's not very glamorous, but it's something we haven't really talked about. These are all essentially scientific and fun things, except maybe Jim was volunteering for something not so fun. But if we don't have people committed to trying to build our membership and help secure funding, then that's going to be tough. And so I think those topics have to be listed here. Even if the answer is nobody's going to do it, we still have to remind ourselves those need to be done. And so ideally, you'd like to have a funding committee that goes out and knocks on doors. And you'd like to have a recruitment committee that goes out and tries to recruit members. Another thing that we didn't really talk about, which was sort of penciled in for this period, was what to do about the seminar series, the virtual seminar series.
So I would maybe save that, James. I think, in terms of getting a list of deliverables, I think we've achieved that.
Right, but the seminars are a deliverable we have now.
Right.
And the question is, do we continue that? Do we build on it? And I think so. And recruiting members and seeking funding. I understand we have funding talked about later, but if people are willing to commit to actually working on those things, that would be helpful. If not, it's useful information.
I think, at least from my perspective, and we've heard that over times we've been meeting, that the webinars are valuable and worth it, and they are a tremendous goldmine of information and resource for GLIMPRINT. So I am certainly would vote to keep it going. The question is, the challenges right now that we have today, looking at the speaker list, is that we are lacking speakers. And maybe we should have another meeting on that, or we should have one of the breakout sessions. Maybe we discuss a strategy on how to do that.
I mean, literally, if everybody in the room now suggested 3 speakers, we'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not that big an effort, I think. How we get people to show up for the meetings is a different question, but asking each person to give us 3 names today wouldn't be terrible.
Okay. Maybe take a 7-minute break, and we start at 1:10, and at that time let's create breakout groups for each of these topics, and start working on towards the strategy on how to make them happen. So in the next 40 or so minutes, we were hoping that we can start making progress towards the deliverables that we just defined. James, would you mind opening up breakout groups?
So you tell me what titles you want me to give the breakout rooms.
So I sent them to you in a message.
I'm sorry. Is it in the chat?
Yep.
Fine.
So I've got funding for meetings, website update and strategy.
Meetings only, so okay, fine.
Interoperability, strategy, hackathons, member recruitment, and webinar strategy. And we are down to 9 people here, so we almost have as many groups as or breakout groups as we have people here, so we may end up reducing it down. I guess maybe we should ask the question, who's interested in what right now? And then based on the number of interested folks, we can just open the breakout groups for that.
Well, I could create them. Nobody has to go into them.
Yeah. Well,
So-
or we end up having like one person in each, and so then you know, or then maybe we. At what point does that person leave that group and goes to a different one, right?
I mean, the only thing that's a little complicated is I more or less have to stay in the main meeting because I own the meeting.
Hmm.
So it's a little more difficult for me to, if I leave, somebody else has to be in the main meeting to run it.
So maybe the main meeting could be the webinar strategy breakout, make the main meeting a breakout.
Right. Well, let's see what people feel. I mean, we can ask.
Yeah.
In any case, I could create the rooms. It's no problem to do that. If you like, I can do that right now.
So should we maybe pick 2 main groups that are more the low-hanging fruit so that we can actually deliver something in the very short time?
Yes.
And then keep the other one for other sessions that then people can create their, in the future, because I agree with 9 people. If you're by yourself in the group, I mean, I guess nobody will argue with you, but that's about the only benefit.
Yeah.
So why don't we just run through the list and say how many people are interested in each one, and the ones that have the highest membership, highest number of people who are interested, we open.
Or just looking at, the signups for the individual tasks, deliverables. We've got a lot of people here still who are listed on obtaining grants for a meeting and website update and strategy. We have Rochera here. Are you still here? I thought I saw. Yeah, you're here too on interoperability.
Yeah, TJ said he had to leave, and then James is stuck, so I don't know if there's anyone left to meet with.
And Sharif, is Sharif still here? No, he must have dropped off.
No, I don't see him. He would have been really great to have.
John's gone too. Okay, so that would be you and James. I forgot to list James here too. So you and James have been listed on interoperability that are still here.
Yeah, so if it's not possible to meet in this venue about that, that's fine. I can just leave that, organize a separate meeting or something.
Okay.
And again, we're not trying to prevent saying that this isn't important. It's just a question of what's practical to talk about this afternoon.
Yeah, sure.
So do we have a vote on which breakout rooms we need? Our options are, how many people, we have fundings for meetings. We talked about other kinds of funding too. So just Jim, you were the one who proposed fundings for meetings. Do you want to, should it be fundings for meetings or funding more generally?
We could talk about it. I don't know if there's going to be anybody in particular. I guess we could talk about, the boiler pit, the elevator pitch.
I think we have that's down in the next hour. I think was the elevator pitch we were supposed to have, except that one we already reserved a time for.
Yeah, and the second, it's repetitive. I don't know if you wanted to make it 2 bullet points, Tom, but the website update and strategy is also in the first bullet point.
Yeah. I'm gonna. So I have things listed here by people's interest, I will I will reorganize it such that it's per deliverable with people assigned to each deliverable. So right now it's a little bit duplicate there. So, okay, if we had a breakout session for obtaining grants for a meeting as Jim proposed right now, how many people would join that breakout group?
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't I've just opened them, I've opened the breakout rooms. Why don't people move into the breakout rooms? And if after 2 minutes, the breakout room has one person in it, come back.
Or close it or bring them back. Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, you can, it's set up so you can go in and out as you please.
Okay.
But I am leading basically the first two, so I can only
you have to
do-
prioritize one.
So I am going to go to the funding one first. Maybe I do the website one later.
Okay, I hope everybody had a productive discussion. Sharif, glad to see you back here.
Yeah, sorry, I had to step out briefly and then join
No
back.
worries. We were hoping that people could very briefly report on the discussions in each of their groups.
I can start, I guess. So if I can share, so if I find the right window. So this is the funding meeting, and actually it should be meeting. Discuss possible funding mechanisms for a recurring GLIMPRINT meeting. It's myself, James for a few minutes, Hannah and Rita. As kind of an action item to come out, we have a whole list of possible funding mechanisms, R13, R24, various NIH funding ones, a couple of conferences and venues that routinely fund, one of conferences. And what we've decided is that there's names here that we're just going to get a quick read on how many days will they fund travel, when's the next due date and all that kind of stuff. So we have a little bit better feeling for these in particular. If there's something we should go after where that looks like it's got the right kind of time frame. We decided to not talk about linking to big society meetings right now because there's no funding for that, and we really don't have the bandwidth to say to SIAM we want to do a 2-day digital twin workshop. I don't think we have the resources to do that. I am going to talk to Reinhardt about this Air Force one to see if he has any ideas about that. I'm going to add, if we do an R24 or a conference or an R13 conference meeting, I believe that requires a letter of approval. So we're thinking NIAID, maybe NIGMS, and I'll send Grace Peng an email. Maybe she has some thoughts about what institute at the NIH might be willing to fund this kind of a meeting. Then we talked about it if we were to go for a multiple meeting grant, maybe 2 meetings a year for 2 years or something like that, how we might lay out. The first meeting would be challenges. Second meeting might be a clinician to modeler interface meeting. We get clinician and modelers together. Modelers need particular information. Clinicians want particular information back. And often the modelers and the end users are not well connected. Then do a meeting maybe on social issues like medical record sharing, which is a challenge. And then just kind of some of the generic ones that people would say you'd want. Data integration, interoperability meeting, a modeling meeting maybe, and an educational meeting. It'd be nice to be able to get modelers, MDs, and people that actually make hardware together in one meeting for a few days. And so kind of do that as a late meeting. I think these are all saleable. Some of these are our generic, fuzzy concepts. Sounds good to propose, and they never seem to actually accomplish anything. So the action items are the individuals are going to get quick data for these venues. It sounds like the NIH training grant is the most likely thing. Its next due date is mid-April. So I don't know, that the deadline might be a bit tight. So we'll have to make a quick call about whether we go for that short deadline or we go ahead and go to the next deadline. We think the next deadline is in the summer, but we're not sure about that. It might only be twice a year. Okay, so that's what we got.
So do you have a schedule for having a description of what the meeting would be? Because I think that's pretty, or if you're going to go to
You can't-
NIH and ask
You
them.
can't, yeah, we can't do that because it's a hugely different schedule. If you're talking about a 1 day meeting somewhere, or you're talking about 3 days at Cole Harbor, or you're talking about 4 3-day meetings funded by an NIH.
So you want to decide the venue first and then decide on how what you're going to do.
Well, see, we've got this list here, and I think you can always, take if it's a 3-day meeting once, maybe you make 1 day and you pick 3 of these topics or something like that.
That's a pretty good outline for 40 minutes.
Okay, so that's all we got. I don't know what we plan to do in the future. This whole group, I assume we'll exchange emails or start working documents or something. Okay.
You have a working document there.
Yeah, that's it. And when we get, I'll keep filling this out, and you want to share it in the GLIMPRINT Dropbox or whatever our thing is.
Roshira, your hands up.
Yes, so I was going to report on the interoperability. So so it was myself and Chiang, and then fortunately Sharif joined for the last half. So to sum up, we talked about the need for interoperability, and Sharif has this biomodels that is using SBML as a common standard for, and that works for reproducibility and interoperability. And we talked about how funding is kind of thin on the ground for that. And Chiang mentioned that, he had been in the habit of adding SBML to some of his papers, and then he sort of stopped doing that because it wasn't really getting reused. So what we were saying at the very end, so because it was kind of like a half of the meeting when all 3 of us were there, so it was, we didn't get we certainly didn't get that level of detail, but we were saying that, so there's this big vision in all these immune digital twins papers, and to actually make that a reality will require interoperable models. So at least, this is what we 3 agreed on. I don't know if it's just the people who came to that room who believe that. So one idea we had was that we could talk about, okay, so we want to build, we would like to build an immune digital twin to answer such and such scientific questions in the field. And that would require putting together these kinds of models, like a lymphocyte model and a, bone marrow model or something like that. And these are the existing models, and they're not interoperable. They're not in SBML. So we want, so we basically would be targeting, we would want a targeted grant for the kind of thing that Sharif is doing, which is targeted at making the immune digital twin work. So it's just that subset of all possible biomodels. And then Chiang was starting to say something hierarchical, and then the breakout ended. So, but I guess that would mean that I took that to mean multi-scale. That there's systems levels versus tissue levels, cell levels, and so we could have a framework where we have a vision that for the immune digital twin we would need this, this, and this. So can we have funding specifically for making these SBML compliant models? So it would be because it's not glorious, it's kind of boring, so it's something that it actually could benefit from direct funding specifically for that purpose, not as an afterthought, in order for it to get done.
Well, but
so I would say that's the summary.
So are you trying to, I'm trying to understand, are you trying to build a model or build standards for interoperability or something else?
So this is something you could speak to, James. So Sharif thinks that, SBML exists and has been, there, for 15 years already, that the standard already exists that's sufficient. But the problem is that, many of the models and papers that come out are still not compliant with that standard. So is there any other opinion about that?
Well, there are a couple of issues, one of which is you're assuming that it's a network model if it's SBML, and you're also assuming certain other limitations that SBML has, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But in other,
So could we, is that an inherent limitation of SBML, or is it that SBML could be evolved to grow past those limitations?
but
SPML has an editorial board that I think is still working towards evolving it. So I think there could be an opportunity of creating a dialogue with them. I think Sharif, you're on it, no?
Yeah, I'm part of the editorial board, yeah. So I just want to add to this. I think SBML, I think, has evolved and it greatly supports lots of modeling framework from constraint-based modeling, logic modeling, and so on. But I think for digital twins, I'm not sure yet if it is fully mature to address that. Probably we may have to think what could be that new standards going to look like. Is it an extension of SBML, or is it something similar to SBML, or like James are doing with the multi-cell ML? We're trying to bring cell ML and Morpheus ML together. And then this is SBML qual. So we need to think a bit more in the interoperability. I mean, there's the definition.
Perhaps an ensemble of standards.
Yeah, probably that's what I think it could be. Then it's an ensemble of standards that could work together, and probably there should be some meta standard that can tie all these standards to work together, so that different tools can execute still various components and so on. So it needs a bit more thinking. And
I don't want to be negative, but as we know, that you can write things in SBML, but that doesn't mean you can interconnect the models. It means you can run them on different platforms, but it doesn't mean interoperability. And so I think that's what I was trying to say before. I think when you use the word interoperable, you have to explain what you mean by it. So you could have front-end portability, which means that the model is written in SBML, you can run it in Copazi, you can run it in Cell Designer, you can run it in something else.
Yeah.
You can have back-end compatibility, which means, gee, I wrote a solver, and this solver can be plugged into a variety of frameworks and used. For example, it's a Python library, so you could call the solver from a variety of places. That's another kind of interoperability. There's the kind of interoperability using an integration framework like Muscle 3 that was talked about last week, where you could write arbitrary code, provided it has a Python API, you could connect it to something else through that integration framework. A third kind of interoperability is that you define some model of a T cell and a model of a B cell, and you assume that you could pull those two models together, put them in an environment, and have them work. Now that'll
I think
work.
that's actually the kind that I was thinking of, but yes.
That'll work, for example, and if you're right, one of the reasons NetLogo is such a powerful language is that you can do that with it. But it also has a lot of limitations because in general, as I'm always saying, the problem is in biology, if you bring two cells together and next to each other, they will do something. They may die, they may kill each other, but they will do something. But in computing, there is no universe, there is no physics that's inherited. And so to say that you're going to bring two models together and make them work together without some assumption about the containing environment is not really a practical thing. A language standard by itself doesn't let you do that.
Yeah, that's even they're written in the same language, right? Yeah.
Right. And so again, I'm not saying it's not worth doing. I'm just saying that you have to be quite specific about what you mean by interoperability.
And I think that last one is perhaps where our value as GLIMPRINT could come from, because a lot of people are working on SBML type encoding and trying to improve that, but GLIMPRINT is trying to build an immune digital twin where at some point B cells will need to be talking to T cells or the models of those. And so maybe getting in front of that and being the ones developing the a standard for how to define the interface between different cell types of the immune system could be something that might be manageable and small enough bite-sized chunk.
What information is exposed? What does a cell look like from a computational point of view? What is its API? And the
Right, and where the scope is defined by what is the minimum necessary to build the immune digital twin that will answer this question. I mean, obviously, you know,
It'll
there's
depend on
different
the
kinds.
question, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on the question, yeah. So I think there's lots of I mean, different levels of interoperability, as you said. What we're talking, I mean, we need to define what you want to focus on, and based on that, proceed.
I mean,
We need to
a
define all these.
hackathon could be a very good way of doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that could be a good
That's
hackathon.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Which reminds me, Sharif, when do I have to give a lecture to your people?
In 2 weeks' time. I hope you don't forget.
Well, please send me a reminder because I know we've been. I'm a little bit behind. Okay.
Thomas, you are also doing, so just in case. I hope you didn't forget.
Yep.
Tom, are you going to England to do it? Are you doing it in person?
Online.
Okay, 'cause I know last time you went in person. So. Okay, sorry about that, but I just realized I had.
I'm going there in person for Anna's course in April. But
I don't know about that one. Okay, good. Okay, good. So
maybe the last.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen.
So before that, are there action items before you switch? Are there action items coming out of the? Is there something that you want to? In your discussion of interoperability, do you have a plan? Is there something you're going to do next, or is it to follow up on the discussion?
We hadn't made a plan, but you listed several versions of interoperability. So maybe one action item would be to, you know, just generate a further email discussion, like what do we want to have our and maybe to have another meeting that includes I think TJ Shigo, who wanted to be present, so we can have a specific interoperability group meeting. And the first thing is to continue defining the scope and the strategy. So I hope someone will be able to give me his email too, or yeah, everyone's, the relevant people's email.
Yeah, whose email? Sorry.
So Zhang and Sharif, maybe I have his email already, and TJ Shigo, I think his name was, who expressed the interest. He was in the chat.
Yeah, so I took note of everybody that was interested in the different areas. Yeah, so maybe James and I can send emails to folks to kind of summarize who's been interested in what and include the relevant people in there. And we have the list of registrants for this meeting, James, right? With their contact information through Zoom, correct? Okay, good. So yeah, we'll share that. Okay, anybody interested in reporting on our website strategy?
Well, I was nominally going to be the leader of it, so.
Yes, you still are, but we took the liberty of moving it forward, if that's okay.
Okay.
So what we have discussed, it's kind of in the reverse order of the discussion, but maybe makes sense to discuss it in this order in particular. First, having a strategy on how do we manage the website. So we have discussed potential strategy. Could we have 1 to 2 people who update the website directly? They're responsible for updating this website in some frequency, we can decide if it's once a week or once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever will make sense. And they will be responsible for placing at least one piece of content on the website in that frequency, and or placing content on the website from what we would develop a content feed document, which would be basically a Google Doc that would, given the frequency, let's say if once a week we're putting updating content on the website, it would have a cutoff day of the week that people from the community, from GLIMPRINT, would have the opportunity to add pieces of content that would be then added to the website, and we would have some sort of a committee on the content to make sure that if we open up the link, we somehow need to manage, make sure that there is no spamming going on and things like that. And the committee on content, they could also would be responsible for helping generate the content on behalf of GLIMPRINT in general. So that's, but Jim, you're the lead, so you'll have to have that. You can take over from here too after this initial dump of thoughts. Some of the decisions that need to be made as soon as possible is that who will be that person responsible for updating the website. That we also need to consider, and that person who will be updating the website probably will have the last say in it in terms of what system we use. I realize the UNL system is not really, the Drupal system is to me at least cumbersome, not easy to log in. If we want to keep using it, the person who is updating the website needs to get a UNL affiliate position, which is not difficult, but it's just more steps that have to be taken. And then they get the UNL email address where they can use that to log in and update the content. If we want to consider a different platform for the website, we were discussing some of the things it has to be able to do, such as including videos and then a link or a button to a payment page for membership payments. We could also have a single glimprint.org email address. Well, this is relevant if we move away from Drupal, because for Drupal, a UNL, we will have to use a UNL email address. But potential alternatives to the current website infrastructure is I've used card.com. It's very easy to build websites with. It costs like the pro account costs like somewhere in the range of $30 a year. So you can transfer your domain name to them, and you cannot download the website as far as I know, but it's very easy to build it and maintain it. James mentioned Google Sites. I've never used it. I don't know if you know how easy it is to build nice looking websites or not. And I'm sure there are others too, if we want to consider other platforms. And then there were specific suggestions on how to for immediate improvements to the website. Especially we kind of played with the mission statement that is, or the vision, abbreviated mission statement on the website that's there right now. So this is a revised version of that. This whole thing, it's not all formatted the same. Also, our current figure, whatever was on our landing page, is broken. And there was a suggestion to add the figure from the science paper that James, you showed today. And then also, you know, do a better job, advertise the
better check about copyright on that figure.
Oh, they do?
You better check on copyright.
Oh, we check on, yeah, okay.
We still need a logo, by the way.
Yeah.
Do this.
Check on copyright. Okay, that's a good point. We'll add that too.
There was a figure there. I don't know how it got broken.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I
that's.
think the figure that was there is basically our viral pandemics figure.
Mm.
It's got a little piece of it, one of TJ's models in it and some other things in it.
Okay. Yeah, that's the issue with Drupal. I mean, it can't even run without. not
Well, the
running.
only time I tried to add an entry to that website, I broke it.
You totally broke it.
I mean,
You like erased it, not just broke it.
I don't know how. I mean, all I literally tried to do is add one, one link,
Yeah.
and it managed to erase to
Yeah.
destroy the whole thing. So I think that that's not a robust system.
No, it's very sensitive to perturbation, I think. But then also we should add links to the webinars if until we have the bandwidth to maybe implement some scheduled sort of updates for the website. At minimum, we could maybe at least put in a link for a current schedule that's on the IMAG website and a link to the archive. Chantal's doing a workshop, so we need to add information on that. Also, a really good idea to somehow build in a discussion forum on the website where the community can have potentially, discussions just there, right there online or as part of the website. And also have a link there to enable others to add things to the website. So maybe that content feed could be linked directly from the website.
And it was also to add that line in the slides that are presented at each webinar on Thursdays before the talk, like they say, we have a LinkedIn page, we have this, we have that. And then we can add, because we mentioned GLIMPRINT, and say, if you want to add content to this, use this link, which
Okay.
would be feed content,
So I'm sorry, I'm not following. So have a link to do what again?
Well, like we advertise the link for speakers, like James do the little 2-minute speech before the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Our webinars, just add one more link. Like say, if you want to improve content, so that you remind people it's there.
Oh, during the webinar, you mean?
During the webinar.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because if people don't go on the website, they don't know that they can feed
I
things.
see.
So
I
you
see.
kind
Okay.
of have to advertise it once in a while,
Just say, follow us on LinkedIn, or I think we're already saying that about Twitter, right?
Yeah, but then you can also say, if you want to add
Or
content
X as it
to
is.
the GLIMPRINT, click this link and or this is the link.
Wait, do we want
That would just
the
be an email.
entire public to be able to
Yeah,
add
it's just-
content?
It would
Well,
just
no,
be an email.
that's
You could-
it's
They're just gonna spam it.
the
No.
feed content would be somebody that can
it's-
suggest something, and then
Yeah.
whoever update the website have the final say. This is spam, it's not going
I
out.
see. So you can submit content, yeah.
Yes,
Submit
correct.
content.
Yep.
Submit potential content, or whatever
Yeah.
you phrase it. It
Yeah,
doesn't
so it could be
gonna
a
be
Google
posted.
form. You make a Google form,
Yeah,
they fill out and then it gets emailed off to someone and someone has to do something with it.
exactly. Like we have the form to suggest a speaker.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Same idea.
So that's what we have on here. Jim, do you agree with it?
Yeah, but the killer is who's gonna do it.
Right.
I mean, I've tried a couple of times to change that website and I can't change it anymore. It just doesn't work. That's why we still got the announcement for last summer's CopyCell class up there at the front page. It's because I can't, it won't let me change anything. And I'm nominally an admin and all that kind of stuff. And the site is so obscure and
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we were talking about migrating to an easier to update type.
So I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're willing to do it in principle, then let's figure out what it would take for you to be able to do it. So we could I can arrange a meeting with Tim that's responsible for the website and figure out what the issue is and see if we can get it resolved for you so that you could be able to do that. Or if we're past that stage and say, no, screw that, we need a different infrastructure for a website, we can start looking for, and that's where, if you're in the end the one doing it, then, let's find something that you're familiar with, that works for you, that you can rely on from your experience.
Sure. Can you do that, Tom? Can you schedule a meeting
Yeah.
with your admin person, or so I assume it's a university admin person?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yep. Okay. So we'll do that.
Also put a note in there that Rashira has mentioned a few times that it should be an HTTPS site.
Yes, I know, and that's part of that too.
Yeah.
I had a student trying to fix that and was unable to, so we need to get that should be part of getting this. If we're gonna run with this, that needs to be fixed, and your access issue needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and I need to be able to communicate with whoever has God privileges without having to go through you.
Yep.
I can't even believe there's a website tool out there that lets you make an HTTP site.
I know.
And it's in ASCII text. It's all pre-formatted.
Yeah. Okay. So I will do that, and we'll take it from there. And then we can maybe set up, recurring meetings and figure out how to implement the rest of this, document feeds or submission, content submission strategy and things like that.
So as just briefly, as far as the LinkedIn posts, so for now, all I'm going to do is repeat the talk seminar announcement until, somebody has something on the website and that I can link to, unless anyone has other suggestions.
Wait, LinkedIn posts for the webinars that James does, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then I guess we should also decide as part of our marketing strategy, if we link on the website, if we add it as sort of original content, the announcement, or if there is a link to LinkedIn post, which would essentially elevate.
I think it's better if it has its home on the website, but if that's difficult, which it sounds like it is, we can have things that are just on LinkedIn. I feel it's better if it has its home on the website and the LinkedIn is just a post about, directing people to that content. But, if it may take some time for that to be possible.
In the weekly announcements for the meeting, I edit the front page, the viral pandemics IMAG MSM page. I create a unique seminar page. So there is a seminar page created each week for each seminar. And we could use that on the LinkedIn. And on the LinkedIn, basically just put, the title and then person's name, so that when it gets above the click here to read more.
Right, exactly. That's basically my, for now, it's my whole contribution is to make sure that it's, something interesting is seeable before see more.
Yeah. And then so I guess Rashira and I will have to talk about how we're gonna communicate the IMAG MSM seminar link.
Okay. So good. So I guess we're over time now.
Well, in principle, we're supposed to talk about funding now for half an hour.
And yeah, and the funding in particular for the deliverables that we have discussed up to this point.
Well, we had two funding streams. I don't know whether it's worth breaking up or not. One of which was tried to do an elevator pitch, and one of which was talking about other funding mechanisms.
So I don't have a lot of experience, but it seems to me that the interoperability thing doesn't need alternative funding mechanisms, that like the big government funding agencies are very well aware and concerned about that. Is that correct?
No, they will have no
Oh.
interest in funding that at all.
Really?
Mhm.
Well, that's very strange. Okay, so then
They
I
will
guess
be interested in funding a disease.
That's so true.
So
Europe
maybe
is much more interested in funding standards and interoperability and all that kind of stuff. They're spending billions to do that stuff. The US has absolutely nothing that I know of.
I
I'm-
see. Yes, the ones that
it's
I've
not
heard
that-
of, now that I come to think of it, yes, they are in Europe. So
It's not that it's impossible to get funding for it, but in general, infrastructure is not something that they fund in the United States. Now the thing that we got funding from NSF, the POSE is a possibility. That is a place where you could do that. I don't know if they're going to have another round of it. But I don't know whether you'd be considered far enough along to fund that way. It could be a phase one. So you could look at NSF phase one, NSF POSE phase one.
otherwise I'm willing to jump onto the foundation or whatever it is stream if there is one. If we're still doing that.
Well, we can break out or not. I mean, it's a question of what people feel like. That we originally were going to have a breakout, but we're not very many of us, so you have to you decide what you'd like to do. Again, I think it would be nice. It comes back to the issue of who we are. In other words, if we're going to go to a foundation and say give us money, we have to say what it is they're giving us money for. And so that comes back to, that's why we started with the discussion about who we were. But I don't know how people feel here.
I have some idea of possibly approaching the people who fund aging research, which there's already quite a bit. So that's a sort of, I mean, there's like a whole network of different people funding aging research. So that's one, and who are not necessarily government funding. So that's one network that is a possibility.
So I think then you have to ask the question, what is it you're going to propose to them? In other words, is it going to be, you're going to build a digital twin of human immune aging in a particular tissue? What is it that's going to be proposed? If it's GLIMPRINT, GLIMPRINT, then you have to decide, is GLIMPRINT going to be infrastructure, convening organization? GLIMPRINT is going to build a model of a particular kind. All of those are possible.
But isn't it partially dependent on the kind of funding that we can get too?
Yeah, but to get funding, you have to propose what you're gonna do. Right?
But I mean, like, we could propose a bunch of different things, and then, if we decide, okay, well, that didn't work, so we're not going to be that, and we're not going to do that, right?
Right, but you have to start with something. So what would you're proposing an aging and an aging related model? Is that it?
Well, since I was talking about interoperability, I'm talking about an aging related immune digital twin, and I might have to get more specific. And how I get more specific may be partially dependent on, like, what are the personnel, that we have, what we can do, and also partially on what funders might be interested in. And what is already not covered by, competing groups.
Well, I mean, you could say we're going to build an immune digital twin model, generic digital twin model, or an immune digital twin model for cancer or some other thing. But then you have to show that you have the people to do it. Yes. So again, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just trying to trying to help focus what it is you want to propose.
Right. So, I mean, I think we said at the beginning that it does depend on what the people are available to do. So maybe the action item is to try to figure that out.
I think you sort of have to go the other way. In other words, you have to say, this is what I propose to do, and then see if anybody's interested. And you have to reach out, you're going to have to call people and find out, Greg, would you be willing to sign up? Gary, are you willing to sign up? And so on.
Now, we had a very large list, but how many of them are still active? Like, do we maintain the list? Do we drop people if they don't respond to our emails? And
We
that kind
haven't
of thing?
dropped anybody. I think we've only dropped people if the email addresses bounce or they actively say that they don't want to be on the list anymore.
I see.
But it's a few hundred people from the working group, MSM working group, basically.
So would it be considered too spammy if I, formulate an email and send it out to the entire
Not at
list?
all. Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all, but I think you want to be careful about what you propose.
Yes, definitely. It has to be.
I mean, I thought actually
Yeah.
John's idea of doing a survey was not a bad one at all. Maybe you writing a survey would be the most useful thing to do for that.
Yes, and I want to look at the existing.
People are not willing to fill out the survey, they're unlikely to work on a grant with you.
Yes, that makes sense.
I'm not, but other people may feel differently about this, so I'm open to. But I thought that John's idea of using a survey to reach out to a broader community. Problem is who you send it to outside of our regular community. How do you get the word out? You could post it on LinkedIn, for example. And if everybody shares it on their LinkedIn profile, we probably between us have 10,000 or more connections on LinkedIn.
It's not as hard to get visibility on LinkedIn based on if something is relevant. So yes, I mean, if you share it, it's not necessarily going to be visible to all your connections, but it hopefully, I mean, I think LinkedIn is better than some of the other platforms at showing it to the people who are actually interested.
Well,
I still saying that you kind of have to focus a little bit what you want to do and then see who is interested and then focus further based on the expertise you have in the group that's willing to do it with you. Because if you leave it too open, you're going to discuss for months and you're not going to get anywhere. I think in my experience, you have at some point, if you're, like, let's say aging and immune system, as is the example you show some interest in, and then also sometimes contact people from the literature that have the expertise and say, we are a group, we do this, and start focusing the question, because the first thing they're going to ask you, if I'm approached and somebody said, do you want to do aerosol deposition studies with me? I say, sure, but what's your goal? What's the question you're asking to see if I can provide useful information? Because you can do a lot of things with aerosol deposition that's meaningless. It's technically or numerically correct, but it doesn't add to the field. And so I think you'll be more successful if you kind of spend some time deciding what you really want to answer.
Perhaps we should have like a choice of 3 or 4 focused questions. And the idea is that a person will only sign up for probably one of them. And then we could see like what is it? Because otherwise, I mean, we don't want to have to, send the survey out again and again, right? So hoping that at least one of the focused questions will get enough interest that we can then start making it into a proposal.
I mean, what you're doing is a little different. My vision was that we would do a blue sky two-page elevator pitch that says we're going to build immune digital twins. We are going to build immune digital twins, and then we would try to shop that to some foundations. We're not going to have time to do that in the next 25 minutes, but that was my vision of what elevator pitch might look like. That would be rather different from the elevator pitch that you're proposing, although not necessarily totally different. It might be different from the elevator pitch. Certainly, the elevator pitch if we're going to have a community organization that's going to support these kinds of infrastructure for others. Which is why I said, but you might have basically a menu which said, if we had X amount of money, what would we do with it? I'm not sure we're going to get to that today because we're going to run out of time, but something to think about, perhaps.
James, I like your idea of pitching. I mean, that we are going to build digital twin. I think that's great. And then building something which is very generic, like a foundation digital twin or something that is fundamental, that can adapt it to different diseases and so on. That would be great if we can pitch that. And then maybe people can have if we manage to get something like that, then people can use that as the basis to pitch, to get more to apply for more funding to customize that foundation model for different disease and so on. Maybe so that
then that establishes a kind of a funding pipeline, you're saying.
Yeah,
that sounds promising. But it does make the initial pitch very like a big ask, right?
Oh, well, it's not always harder to get more money than less.
Good point.
Now, the thing about a foundational immune model that I anticipate is Pappalardo will come and say he's already done it.
Who will?
Franco Pappalardo from Sicily. Who has his generic immune model. And so if we were going to make that, what?
The Simeon one, who was
Simeon is out of NIH. It has a similar name, but it's not Simeon.
Yeah. He was in Florida, right? Filippo. Okay.
Let's see. He's a VPH person. I'll pull it up.
SIMB 16?
Probably. And for some reason, I always misspell his name. And so, here it is. I mean, it goes back a long way, and I'm trying to see what his latest thing is, but there's this one, isn't it?
So he wasn't in Florida. That was Filippo.
So is everyone already building other models that use his model? If that's not the case, then the question is why. And so I guess if it's something that requires a different model, then we could still build it. And if it's some other obstacle, then we could, fix that obstacle.
Well, it's not because we know it's not easy to build a model of the immune system, but we can, let's see. I'm trying to see his latest. He's working with Alex Kulesa. and Viceconti. So he's basically he's a VPH person. And the latest version of this, the latest version of their software is this one.
From the paper you put, this has been around since at least 2010, so there must be some reason why everybody doesn't just use his framework in their papers.
That's certainly possible.
And it has got only 13 citations since 2010. So I'm not sure.
Now, some of his other papers are more highly cited. I mean, he's very well funded. The EU has given him a lot of money. And he's one of the core people in VPH. Now, again, I'm not saying that you can't go head to head against this. You could
Well, we
say,
don't have to. We could also just build on top of it if people think that that's a good idea.
well, I think it'd be probably harder to get somebody to give you a large amount of money for a foundation from a foundation to do that. Maybe what I should say is, why don't you take a look at that 2023 paper that I pulled up, which is the current state of his universal immune simulator, and see what you think. You're an expert. You'd give it your expert opinion. I know he happens to have clobbered a project that he happens to have scooped a project I was working on with it.
So, please excuse my ignorance. What is VPH?
Virtual physiological human. So,
Oh, okay. I think I did know that. I just
So-
didn't think of it that way.
that's least bad. So this paper, is the one that scooped me. Again, I'm sorry if I derailed the conversation, but I think what you're talking about is a good idea, but we have to focus a little more to be able to do it.
Yes.
And I sort of hoped we'd get there, but maybe we need more conversation. Maybe this isn't happen. It's not going to happen today, but at least we can discuss the issue.
So we are indeed in the last 15 minutes of today's meeting. And so perhaps we can decide on we have several sort of new deliverables, efforts of focus. So one thing that James and I will do is we'll send out a summary to everybody who registered about the outcome, these deliverables that have been decided on and who's associated with them, leading them, and we'll invite or we'll leave it up to you, maybe the leads of these efforts, to invite others. And perhaps then the next would be, the leads setting up regular recurring meetings to make those deliverables happen. And we could use the steering committee meeting on every other Friday to report out on the progress towards those deliverables. What do you all think?
You mean in the regular steering committee meeting or a different meeting?
Yeah, the regular steering committee meeting.
That makes sense.
Yeah, to me too, because the more meeting you create, the least attendance you'll have.
Yes. Any other closing comments, questions? Does that sound like a reasonable strategy, James?
You want to stay on for just a minute if we're going to close now?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this.